Good evening, everybody. Hope I did that right. Moose is not with us, so I'm trying to have to pull my job and his job at the same time. Although, Chuck Mack, you keep that up, we may give you a strange nickname. Really quickly before we get started, we already got a strange nickname. It's the Lone Ranger. Anyway, uh, before we get started, the views and opinions expressed in this program are not necessarily those of the SCV, GEC, any division, brigades, camps, or other subsidiaries. Strictly those of us who are expressing them. Good evening, everybody. See a lot of people out there in the chat. Cousin Vinny and several others. We'll go through in a second and say hey some more. I'm gonna throw you a wrench, Chuck Mack. You can't talk about the upcoming stuff at Reunion, can you?
It depends on what it is.
The stuff your committee's in charge of.
I can make my personal comments, I suppose.
Oh, well, if you want to. Anyway.
And stuff.
Yes.
Well, we're two SCV members. I guess we could have a discussion about it.
Yeah, we don't have everybody on here as SCV members. We may want to leave it alone. Hey, when we get a legal opinion, it gives us an excuse to bring you back on.
All right. Well, I may have gotten a legal opinion about something. You don't know unless you ask.
Well, do you? Do you have one?
Depends on the question.
Can we talk about it?
We could talk about it. I may have an answer and I may not have an answer.
Well,
what's your burning question? If the question is, are we going to try to bundle some of the amendments together? Yes.
That was my question.
I have already talked as the chairman of the committee to the parliamentarian about doing that. And the judge advocate has also, I understand, has talked to the author of certain amendments about doing that as well. So that
lovely.
Is as of now.
Thank you, because if we did I was doing the math a couple weeks ago, if we did all 14 of them and we broke them down into 5 minutes each, that would take up the entire business meeting on one day and push us probably over lunch.
Well, the parliamentary rules, you can bundle things together that are completely germane, interlocked, or dependent on one another. You know, you can't bundle two things together just to get rid of them at once. There have to be some logical reason that these things, in other words, you can't change one part of the Constitution and not change the other if it makes the Constitution in contradiction with itself.
Right.
So that's kind of the idea for now, yes.
But what did the Germans have to do with it?
Huh?
I said, but what did the Germans have to do with it?
Harbor.
See, you took my thing for Smokey and the Bandit and instituted Animal House. That's not fair.
Don't stop me. I'm on a roll. Right.
Anyway, well, I hope everybody's enjoying this nice little banter. You're going to see what type of a show we're going to have. It's part serious, part joking, but 100% SCV chat. So you have some updates on the Cato Monument, right? Cato Parish?
Caddo.
Sorry, not from Louisiana. Don't play one.
Louisiana.
On TV.
And now, see, I can say your state properly.
Yeah, well, you lived in Mississippi.
Well, I lived in Mississippi, yes, and I was married in Mississippi. So, and I have family still in Mississippi. So, but yes, Cato would be Catto, or Catto. But it's named after the Caddo tribe of Indians, which were a derivative of the Apache Choctaw nations. They lived East Texas, North Louisiana, up into Oklahoma, which was a Caddo Indian area. And that's why the big lake just north of town is called Caddo Lake also as well. So yeah, so Caddo Parish, that's how it got its name, because a guy named Larkin Edwards made the original treaty with the Caddo Indians to acquire the land from them. That's why one of the big streets in downtown Shreveport is called Edwards Street.
I thought they just named it after the governor.
Well, I don't know. But oddly enough, that really does fall into the monument story, because in a way, there was never a really good legal trail to follow as far as who owned this property where the courthouse and the monument is. You could have made a legal argument that the heirs of Larkin Edwards still owned all that property because he just let them put a courthouse there because it was originally given to him by the Caddo Indians.
Right.
So we'll jump forward a little bit. So anyway, 1906 is when the UDC had finally raised enough money to erect this monument in a Caddo parish, and the parish commission had donated, and a lot of people had donated, just like, you know, they did all over the South back then. The monument cost $10,000 in 1905, which is like, I don't know what, $250,000 now or more. And it was placed there, and in the minutes of the Caddo Parish government said, we reserve this land for the UDC to put their monument, or something to that effect. Well, what they really meant to do was give the UDC the land. But since no deed was ever filed, the courts finally ruled, no, the parish owns the land, but the UDC owns the monument. Now, let's go back a little bit. So the monument is there in 1906 with great fanfare. And a few years later, they tore down the courthouse and built a new one. So that's not the original courthouse that was there. The monument was there longer than the courthouse. And then in 1936 is when the UCV had their national reunion in Shreveport. And of course, it was a big deal. There's a lot of really cool newspaper clippings all downtown Shreveport with huge battle flags and Third Nationals and First Nationals and welcoming veterans, and there were all kind of speeches and bands playing around town. And one of the things they did to commemorate it was to put an additional marker at the foot of the big monument to commemorate the 46th reunion of the UCV. So that was there also. And so that also became a part of the whole contention. And in the 1950s, as the start of the centennial of the war, they put a flagpole on the monument. And so starting in the 50s up through to the 2000s, there was a flag also on the monument. Finally, you know, the usual people, we've been fighting this fight way before wokeism PC. At least since the early 90s, this fight's been going on with the UDC, the Taylor Camp, and community activists. I guess we're not community activists. I kind of think I am, but whatever. I don't get paid for it. Let's put it that way, like some do. So that we've been fighting that all these years. They finally ruled that we didn't put up the flagpole. The parish did, so they took the flagpole down. Now, one of the things that was interesting, they thought they were going to make a big show out of it, going out there and yanking down the Confederate flag and taking the pole off. So during the night, before this was going to happen, some of our people went down to the monument, took the Confederate flag off the pole, and put a U.S. flag on the pole. So when all the media and all the mucky muck activists showed up, they were all on TV being seen yanking down a United States flag. They didn't really get the PR benefit out of that they had hoped to.
No, they kind of made a point.
Huh? Well,
they kind of made a point.
Yeah. So anyway, so it goes along, and then the commission decides that they're going to have, and you know, for years we've been doing Confederate Memorial Day, which is Louisiana's June 3rd, Jefferson Davis's birthday, at the monument, marching down there, having flags, singing Dixie, having a talk. We've been doing that for years down there. Never had any problems. In 2006, we had a 100th anniversary rededication of the monument, had a big crowd down there, and they even let us fire our weapons and everything as a part of that. Now, you know, because you were there, I believe, that for the sesquicentennial in 2015, everything was still kind of hunky-dory. We marched straight down the main street of Shreveport, and we surrounded the monument flags, and we fired rifle salutes and the whole 9 yards just 7 years ago. And but you know what all's happened since then.
Right.
So they formed a citizens committee, which I had the unfortunate honor to be on. I was on it. Another one of our members, who's a local history professor, Dr. Gary Joyner, who's written several books about the Red River Campaign, was on it. The one of the presidents of the local UDC, Jackie Nichols, was on it. And then another one of our allies is a guy named John Andrew Prime, who wrote for the local paper for many, many years. In fact, I taught his son once for civics. And he's actually a member of the SUVCW. But as an ally, you know, he's preserving history. So right. We were all for, we're going to keep the monument. And the other people on there, it has to come down no matter how much it costs if it breaks the bank and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, we ended up with the recommendation, keep the monument and use the money you got to put up another one. Make an outdoor museum. Have that monument, put up a monument to Caddo Parish civil rights leaders, put up a monument to the Caddo Indians, have a bunch of them out there. What would that hurt? Well, they didn't like that. And they cooked the books and added different people to the committees. Anyway, keeping the monument failed by 1 vote with the commission. And then that's been, Lord, 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And maybe 2017. Yeah. So that's when all the court cases started. And the attorney for the UDC, Dave Nadler, also happens to be the Louisiana Division Judge Advocate.
Right.
Who fought all these cases, went all through different courts, ended up in the federal court. But what are you going to win in federal court? And then it finally comes back to state court. But we feel like, based on what's happened other places, we kind of got a little bit of a victory out of this. If, you look at a place like New Orleans, where they just took them down and put them in a warehouse and nobody may ever see them again. You've got a place in North Carolina where they are just destroyed and not replaced. Where they just stood there and let the crowd yank it down and tear it all up. But what happened in this case, thanks to our lawyer, and I'll give credit to the judge, his name was Marcotte. He just got elected to the appeals court in the state of Louisiana. So that's good for him. Ruled that Caddo Parish owns the land. And part of his ruling is, because Louisiana has a law that the government cannot use loose land based on adverse possession, like an individual can, what they call squatters' rights. Okay, so it doesn't matter how long you're set up on government land, they don't lose title to it. So that was kind of inky, but he ruled that the UDC owned the monument. It was theirs.
See, you lucked out there, because here in Mississippi, if something remains over, I think it's 10 years on a piece of property, it automatically becomes a part of that piece of property. So
there's a law like that too. If you're a renter and you build a carport on the house you're renting, the owner of the house owns it now.
Right.
Right. So it's a little different for a public monument kind of thing, because the parish government talked about it as the UDC's property.
Right. So
he ruled that. The other inky thing that a lot of people didn't realize was there was also this reunion monument that's smaller at the foot. You probably saw the pictures I posted on Facebook. Because I became the agent to go get. So our lawyer, Dave, arranged that not only did the UDC own the big monument, that the SCV was decided to own the reunion marker, because we were the heirs of the UCV.
Right, which that really good precedence, because I remember last year at Reunion, there was a gentleman from the Missouri division who was looking for, something like that. Granted, it'd be better if it was a federal court that said that, but I mean, still, we'll take the
right. But if you look at the UCV's bylaws, they do say upon their disbandment, any of their property belongs to SCV.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was something about whether or not the Louisiana Division got it, but the way the court orders got raised up, the Richard Taylor camp actually has the title to it, though it doesn't really matter. We're all going to decide what to do anyway.
Right.
So the division in the camp voted me to be their legal agent for receiving the marker that we own. Now, so then it comes time, they finally get, and we tell them, boy, y'all going to realize how much money it's going to take and how fragile this thing is. I think it's 37 tons. And, you know, there was a thing ran on in the news one time. One of the commissioners said, well, I'm not sure they intended this monument to be here. I said, 37 tons did not sneak in there in the middle of the night and squat down and nobody has noticed for 100 years.
No
so,
kidding.
you know, everybody laughed at him like they should have. He's in prison now.
Good place for him.
Stealing from a federal child nutrition program.
Is he connected with Brett Favre?
Huh? I don't know. I haven't kept up with what Brett's been up to.
I think it's the same thing.
So anyway, so they get one bid to move it for $2 million. They're like, oh no, crap, we don't have this kind of money. Because what they had is they had a grant from the state of $500,000 for courthouse improvement. They couldn't spend it on anything else, so they couldn't figure out a way to steal it. And so anyway, they got a guy who said he'd do it for $800,000. Turns out that he's a guy who kind of has experience before. If you'll remember, a couple of years ago down in Florida, the UDC was in court with one of the towns down there, and it became determined that the UDC owned the monument, but they had to get it off of county property before a certain date. So this was the company that UDC chapter in Florida had hired. So they had experience moving a monument before, not of this scale, but they were kind of like, okay, we know who they are. And I've got to tell you, I watched it from the get-go, went down there, had pictures sent to me. I took pictures myself. This company really cared about what they were doing. I'm pleased at how it was done. You know, not that it was done. Now, let me throw this caveat in there. We say we're not pleased that it was done. Yes, we would have loved to have won, and it stood there in all its glory forever and ever. Amen. But we all know now that if that monument had been left there, what would it have looked like 10 years from now?
Oh, yeah, it'd have been just like Monument Row.
I mean, they already had to build a box around it while this was going on, because the place is just not just malicious people, but all the druggies and the winos and all sleeping on it and hanging on it. And I mean, it was just, you would have really, really had to have done some high maintenance security. So that being said, they were like, for every piece they were taking apart, they were building like an iron and wood cage to hold that piece for transport. They weren't just going to lift it off and lay it on a truck. Each piece, and you've seen this monument, you know, it's huge. It's got the middle spire with the soldier on it. It has the 4 columns with the 4 generals on it.
Right.
It's got the statue of Cleo pointing to the book of history. I mean, this is a big deal. And the sculptor, Frank Teach, was nationally famous. This thing is on the National Register, okay, which didn't do it any good in court. And so they would come in, for example, the bust of Lee, and they would build a steel cage around it and have wooden blocks holding it. First of all, they would wrap it in this tight plastic to hold it together and cushion it from scarring.
Right.
And then they would build the cage around it. Then they could lift it off and set it on the ground. So when they had it all taken down, they could just put it on flatbeds and move it to its new location, which has been done now. So I'm saying now, Caddo Parish has now erected a new monument. It's this square piece of broken up concrete there in front of the courthouse. And it's a monument to historical lies, intolerance, and racial and ethnic division. And they paid $800,000 for it. That's their monument now.
So
Wasted that money on public safety or something. So, well spent.
yeah, well, you answered my question. I'm glad that the parish had to pay for it.
That was the deal. Not only did the UDC own it, and we own that one, the parish has to pay for the moving and the reassembly. Own the property, picked out UDC. So UDC said, put it here, and the parish had to pay for the transport and the reassembly of it on the new property. Now that's kind of a victory you're not seeing anywhere else.
Oh yeah, and Paul said it best a couple weeks ago. I think it was on Look Around that honestly, if these people don't want to respect our history, don't want to respect our pieces of art, they don't deserve them.
No, the downtown Shreveport certainly does not deserve this magnificent monument and memorial. And so here's the other parts. And one of these became a public story, and one of them did it because we kept it quiet, except, of course, in SCV people. I've already posted this on Facebook. So when they took up our marker from the 46th UCV reunion, that was a time capsule under it, of which we are in possession of now. And later this summer, we'll be setting up an event for the opening of the time capsule. So we'll see how that works out.
Well, everybody definitely tune in to Look Around because more than likely, depending on when we'll for sure talk about it on here, and we may cover it depending on when it is.
Okay, we're going to sell tickets to the opening because it's going to take some money to put the marker back up when we put it where it's going to go, and then maybe raise a little money for Elm Springs. But what I'm thinking of doing is we can make a short video of the opening and debut the highlight video on the chat. And that would drive a lot of people toward your way if they want to see what was in the thing.
Can we just face the camera at the wall and just make a bunch of ooh, ah?
Yeah, you can do that. See how many people watch it. So that's what I had, once we know what's in it, because we're not inviting any of the general public. We're not going to invite any press. Why should they make any money off of what we're doing and our treasures when they've not been there for us? So we will do a press release. One of the things you may have noticed when I put out the pictures of when I went and got the time capsule, I put an SCV watermark on all those pictures.
Right.
So somebody couldn't just grab them and use them. So any pictures that's going to get sent out to the press are going to have an SCV watermark on them. Okay. But also well known is there was a time capsule found in the big UDC's monument as well. So they'll have an event at some time opening their monument. We're looking at the rededication of the monument in its new location sometime probably in October. Jason, if you're tuning in, it would be helpful if we knew when the fall GEC meeting was, because we need that to base off our DEC meeting, and then that's how we'll know when we can make the rededication so that everybody can be there that wants to be there. So as soon as that can be announced, we'll need to know that.
Well, hopefully it's not the first, well, I'm trying to pull up my calendar right now so I can check my work schedule. I'll get with you afterwards because my computer's slow.
Well, I said we'll need to find out that date and then see how the other dates line up after that.
Where is it?
We're going to
do
it? The UDC. Of course, it's their show. This is their monument, and thanks to them and their fight they put up. I mean, you've heard a lot of bad stuff. People complain about the UDC, but Shreveport Chapter 237 has fought tooth and nail for this monument for 30 years. And that's why they ended up getting the judgment to where the parish had to pay for moving it. It's back up where they want it. And that's how we ended up getting the other monument because of this whole fight. Yeah, we were there with them by their side, but they had to decide to be the lead on it because it's their monument. And it's fortunate that we have a bunch of ladies in this area who carried on UDC the way their mothers and grandmothers intended for them to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we got this, because they did their duty.
Like Miss Linda.
That's right. A lot of them. Miss Linda, my wife's been a member of that. One of the leaders, Jackie Nichols, who served on that committee with me, and she was kind of the president when all the lawsuit part. You've got Margaret Dupree, past president. You've got a lot of them. A lot of our local SCV members' wives are members of that chapter too. So yeah. Oh, Miss Linda and I had vowed one time we were going to chain ourselves together to that monument.
I cannot remember how many years in a row that you're. Yeah, I cannot. I'll also say I cannot remember how many years in a row that I've seen Miss Linda and Miss Belinda selling something at National Reunion, collecting donations some way for the monument. And hats off definitely to the ladies of the UDC for that.
Mardi Gras bead with that monument on it one year with a medallion. They've had several things over the years they've sold at Reunion to help for the legal funds and all that stuff. So it's where it is. It's a beautiful spot. It's on an original battlefield. Y'all get more details on that when they decide to actually release, because they don't want everybody just driving down there right now. So I've been down there. It really looks nice where it's at, and it's overlooking an original battlefield.
I have a feeling I know which one it is.
Oh, I'm sure you do. You may well have been there.
Well, if it's the event I'm thinking of, I've never been able to do that because it's always a conflict.
Because the land is family is a member of our camp that owns that land, and the family donated a portion of it to the SCV, and then the SCV has leased it to the UDC like 99 years for $1. In fact, Paul was the one who received the $1 on the SCV's behalf from the UDC. So yeah, when that will not be an invitation only thing, other than you got to be a good person. But we want as many people there, as many infantry, whatever, so we can get there. We're going to fire cannons. It's going to be a hoopla when we rededicate this thing. And not only did they put it back up again, they've cleaned it all. The little fence that was around it, they're sandblasting it and repainting it. The guy really cares what he's doing that's running this company. I have to say that. I've talked to him several times, and he's just been great to work with. And I hate to say this, but if anybody ever finds themselves in a position where their monument has to be taken down, I would recommend this guy. He will care for it. And so you can contact the local chapter UDC if you ever want to know who this guy is.
He sounds a lot better than we had a problem up in Lowndes County in Columbus, Mississippi, where the county sat on it and voted to remove it, and then sat on it for a while, and finally took it down and then put it into storage up there, and it was in storage for almost a year before they put it back up. They kept the monument company kept
giving. I saw Forrest Dahl's post recently being back up in the cemetery.
Right. It went up Tuesday right before our division reunion in Columbus. So it's at Friendship, and they're planning a rededication for that one the Saturday of Veteran Day weekend.
Okay.
Which there'll be more information out there about it, because Friendship Cemetery, of course, is where Lieutenant General Stephen D. Lee is buried.
So that's outside of Columbus.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's still in the city of Columbus. It's still within the. It's not in the downtown area. It's like that.
Well, downtown, what downtown used to be. Downtown's bigger now. They've been gutted. So.
Yeah. Anyway, really quickly, we've got to pay the bills here, Chuck Mac.
Well,
first,
if I could talk about this till Pop Talk break, I guess we made it.
Well, we did. We're getting right on time for the Pop Talk break. It's time for first our Moose Fact of the Week, sponsored by 1175 Firearms Training. Of course, that's Carl Jones's firearms expertise and training. With that, the Moose Fact for this week is that mooses, or moose rather, there's no plural for the word moose, they can swim very well. In fact, during the summers, they spend most of their time in water. And on average, a moose can hold its breath underwater for 30 seconds. Did you know that, sir?
I do know that there is a circumstance where there is a plural of moose, just like there's a plural of fish. If you're talking about 80 bass, it's still fish. But if you're talking about bass and brim and different species, it's fishes. So if you are talking about different subgenres of moose, it could be mooses. But I do know that they're very powerful swimmers. In fact, you don't want them swimming anywhere near your canoe if you're out in the river, because they will turn your behind over out in that freezing cold water. And sometimes I tell you the story about when my sister-in-law towed home a dead moose one time.
Go ahead.
Well, she just moved to Canada with my brother-in-law, and everything was frozen over, and somebody had run over and killed what has ended up being a baby moose, which means it was about 400 or 500 pounds. So being from Mississippi, she decided no point in letting the meat go to waste. So since she couldn't load it up, she tied a rope to it and just kind of skied it on the ice all the way back home and hung it up, got it jacked up in the barn. When my brother-in-law came in, he's like, "Oh, holy jeez, what are you doing? You can't bring a moose home, because it belongs to the state and all that stuff." And she's like, "Oh," and he said, "This is a baby one anyway." So she calls the whoever the authorities are and says, and laid it on thick. "I'm from Mississippi. We didn't know any better. We didn't know to feed our family." And they said, "Oh, it's okay, lady. Just go ahead and keep the moose." So she said it was pretty funny going on a curve and the moose sliding on the ice back and forth like it was skiing back there. So just go ahead, lady. Keep the moose.
And our second thing, we're coming up on our Pop-Tart break. Our Pop-Tart breaks, of course, are now sponsored by our own Commander-in-Chief, Larry McClooney. Guys, if y'all missed our episode on his newest book in General Beauregard's Defense, go back and rewatch it, but not watch it right now. Rewatch it later on your own convenience. Beauregard's Defense is a very well-written book. It's set up more like a court case than your stereotypical biography, where he actually goes into with plenty of first-hand sources on some of the things that Beauregard has gotten a bad rap on in the past 160 years from most academia. So give it a look. Also on his website, LarryMcClooney.com, you can find his other book, The Yazoo Pass Expedition, a Union Thrust into the Mississippi Delta. It's the only book that is, really to my knowledge, that has been written on the Yazoo Pass Expedition. It's my favorite of his books because I'm mentioned in his foreword by name. And his other book, On to Vicksburg, the Mississippi Central Railroad Campaign, which deals with Van Dorn and Holly Springs and things like that. Again, that's LarryMcClooney.com, LarryMcClooney.com. There you can find his contact information. You can get a copy of any of the books autographed from him if he's got them in stock. Shoot him an email, and he'll get back to you and on how to pay and everything like that. He does accept credit cards. The books are also available on Amazon, but just like any other author, he'd prefer you to buy directly from him. Trying to think of our other sponsor for this show, which is, of course, the Confederate Legion. If you missed last week's episode of SCV Chat, we had the Kennedy twins on talking about what the Confederate Legion is up to and their current attack at. Guys, if you haven't heard of the Confederate Legion, where have you been for the last 4 years? And why haven't you been paying attention to SCV Chat? Because we mention it every episode. It's the South's way to reclaim the narrative about not only what it means to be proud to be Confederate, but what it means to be proud to be Southern. Get involved. You do not have to be a member of the SCV to get involved. It's open to all members, or not all members, all genders, and men, women. Those are the only two. Get involved. Make a donation today. Really quickly, we're going to play one of the Faces ads that can be found on MakeDixieGreatAgain.com, which is the website for the Confederate Legion. And when we get back, we're going to talk about something a little bit just as serious as the monument, but just as interesting, the oratory. Oh, all hell Hank. We'll be right back in just a second.
There is a place nestled in the rolling farmland of southern Middle Tennessee. A home constructed in 1837, nearly lost to the ravages of war. Saved by a servant and a Confederate general. A place where families loved and lost. If walls could talk, what stories could be told? If a place, a home, can feel love, loss, pain, surely this is one of those places. Nearby is a more recent structure, and inside are the stories of heroes and heroines, stories of battles won and lost. Stories of sacrifices made by the people of its native soil. A place that will tell the true and complete story of the Southland and the war fought for its freedom. From the causes that led to the conflict to the modern-day struggles to protect Southern history. Historic Elm Springs and the Confederate Museum at Elm Springs are the general headquarters for the Sons of Confederate Veterans. A place where the story of the Southland and its historic struggle is preserved and told. Come and discover your history.
And we are back. Lost you there for a second there, Chuck.
Yeah, the screen froze, and it acted like it was on my end, so I just signed out and signed back in again.
Okay. Oh, and you're at a different angle.
Oh, well, want this?
Well, no, it's good. I mean, I can see the picture of your staff over there back when you were commander-in-chief.
Yeah, there are like me and 4 other ones on there became commanders-in-chief.
Let me see. Paul.
Yeah.
Chris.
No, Chris had already been commander.
Chris had already been. That's right. I get that mixed up. Michael, obviously.
Yeah.
And Kelly.
Yeah. One more.
Tom.
Yep.
Well, as your elected GEC, I'm sure that was Larry your historian-in-chief at that time?
Yes.
So that's 6.
Well, he wasn't
a staff officer
on that picture, but he was on GEC.
Yeah.
Right.
So, oratory. Gotta get started.
Well, Hank's better looking than whoever that ugly goomer is.
It's our friend and expert guest, Thomas Franklin.
For Thomas Franklin, if you don't say something, I'm going to think you're incapable of it.
Thank you.
I'm right. He's incapable of coherent speech.
We heard you, Thomas.
You can count to 1. All right. Go ahead.
All right, Thomas. We got you on the wrong week again. You know you're supposed to be on next week, right, Thomas? All right. We'll bring you back next week, Thomas.
But he had his coat hanger available to him today, so he could log on.
That's exactly what it was.
He may not have his coat hanger antenna every day. That's how he gets his Wi-Fi through a coat hanger.
Well, it's better than the aluminum hat he's tried before in the past.
Oh, that reminds me. Somebody I saw at Walmart or somewhere on the rack where they have the aluminum foil, somebody put free hat included in each box.
So,
my favorite one though is the picture you see sometimes of the guy in his foil hat and his cat wearing his foil hat.
I've seen that one. That one's good. So for those that have never attended a national reunion, or for those who have attended a national reunion but have never attended the oratory contest,
they've not really attended a reunion if they have not attended the oratory.
Right, because it is well known that the oratory meets and allows the national to meet with it.
Yeah, hold their convention around our event.
Right.
Correct.
So if you can give a brief history of the oratory and and a kind of a rundown of what somebody can expect if they've never attended, and what this year's topic is, because it's been published in the Veteran, and the rules.
Yeah, the last Veteran, what was it, June or whatever, has the topic and the rules. One of the things they unfortunately can expect is at some point Frank Powell may be exposing himself. We have a plan for that this year.
Don't break tradition.
It's a rule. You know how serious the oratory is about its rules. But for let me just give this brief thing. At one time, like in the early 90s, it was a completely serious event. It was actually sponsored by the MOSB, them. And I mean, it was serious. You wore a coat and tie, and you had to turn in a copy of your speech to the judges ahead of time, and they followed along and all that sort of thing. And you were actually trying to do a persuasive oratory, and it goes back to the long tradition of political speechifying and stump speaking, because before the days of mass communication, that's how you persuaded the people. You just got up and you spoke, and it was your ability to speak and communicate and make your point, whether or not you won office or won whatever it is you were trying to be persuasive about. So that's where the idea of the Southern Orator, and of course there's many Southern orators like John Randolph, John C. Calhoun, people like that who are thought of, to be great orators. And that's kind of the tradition. Even when I started, I did my first oratory in 97. You still had to turn in a copy of your speech ahead of time to the judges and the MC, even though it wasn't a serious event so much anymore. It did have a little bit more form to it. I remember that first year I did it, and I was kind of like Jerry Clower in football. The first oratory I ever saw, I was in it. I never got to watch it. So that 1 year, James Turner and I were both contestants. So was Kelly Barrow. The guy from Missouri named Gene Dressel won. And James Turner said because he stole his speech from 2 years ago. But it was a really interesting event. And the next year I was in it, in 98, is when I won my first one, when we were in St. Louis. And the topic was compare Jefferson Davis to any United States president. So that's the kind of topics we generally had. And then over the years, we got rid of the stupid, you got to turn your speech in, because a lot of us just did notes and things like that. And it continued to be run by this other organization. And I had, if you had to stick to your written speech, it'd be blackballed. It might happen anyway, Carl. We'll see how it starts. Because as I was fixing to say, over the years, there have been some inky moments that have happened. When that
Dallas,
other
Texas
was running it, we had a convention in Mobile, and it almost turned into a knockdown, drag out. It got really ugly during the oratory because this one boy, I think he was from Virginia, got all snockered up and started carrying the cause a little bit too far, and he picked up the U.S. flag and threw it on the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah, that no, you don't do that. One that's outside of what we're supposed to be doing. We don't have to be disrespectful to anything else to be respectful to what we're talking about. Also, you've got a lot of veterans in the SCV that's their battle flag.
Right.
You know, you just don't do that. And so that caused a big hurrah. And since the MOSB was the sponsor, he had to get up the next day and he apologized all during the meeting room, and they did this plan, blah, 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 blah. It was a big deal. Okay. So, and I had won it several years at that point, but had John Key from Alabama, who's, it's not really fair because he's a professional speaker. He's a Southern Baptist minister.
Yeah.
But then he became the MC of it. So then I won it a few more years while he was MC. And then when the coup happened and we split from that organization, well, what's going to happen to the Oratory? Well, basically another coup happened. Me and James Turner and guys like Kelly Barrow just said, we're doing it. You know, forget SCV hierarchy. They ain't got nothing to do with it. We'll just put it on. And nobody can tell us what to do or who can be in it or what the rules are. We're just going to go in the meeting room at 8 o'clock and we're going to make the rules. And that's how the modern oratory started. We just said, we're going to do it. And we did it. So that's kind of been the committee. Pretty much the committee now is James Turner, myself, and we have Chuck Rand involved. He'll be timekeeper. Michael Bergeron helps out with some of that stuff. And we'll drag other people in to help out with different skits and things like that.
Yeah,
we only really had one other, ugliness. We did have, as you know, at the Oratory in Dallas, we had a guy who was, let's say, shouldn't have been public speaking anyway. He had mental difficulties and used some inappropriate language, and he ended up getting thrown out of the SCV.
And he looked like Kaito.
That sucker would never be in the Oratory. He just wanted to sit there and run his mouth and not actually have to compete against anybody. So that's how that got to be. And Louisiana's had a good run. After me, Chuck Rand's won it several times. Charles LeRay's run it several times. And it's a bigger deal than most people think as far as work. We have to decide how the topic's going to be, how we're going to arrange it. We have a schedule. We started doing a theme every year, which is not an easy thing to come up with a theme every year. And then we have to do, and we started also doing the entertainment during the break, which is how, Candyman got his name last year.
Right.
And so James and I have already decided what the entertainment break is going to be this year, which you won't know until it happens. And then another thing we do is that Gene Andrews, James Turner gets a big flag, and Gene Andrews does all the hand painting of this year Oratory, and that's the prize for the winner every year. And so that's really nice too. And so I don't know how much longer James and I will do it. People don't realize kind of what a pain it is in some ways. It's a lot of fun in some ways. Also, people don't realize the contestants. But generally, most of them not just getting up there and winging it. They've actually worked. I mean, when I was a contestant, people would go out to dinner, supper Friday night, and I wouldn't go. I would stay in a motel room and practice my speech. People actually put some effort into this, so I hope people that go to it. But it adds a really fun event for everybody to do. People have tried to screw it up over the years. We had one convention one year that wanted to have people buy tickets to the Oratory. And we told them, hell no. We would just go do it in a parking lot if we had to. This is a free thing. There's occasionally we'll have a band there and they can play a song between each speech. And we're like, no, you'll screw it up. So, now we pretty much have them trained. I have to give kudos to this year's chairman, Tim Pilgrim. He basically said, what do you want? And I said, okay, this is what we want for the oratory. He says, all right, this is what you got. So he's done a really good job of working with us on that. So the topic this year is Southern Vacation. So I would encourage everybody to wear, within reason, you know, vacation type clothes, you know, your sunglasses and flip-flops or whatever. Also a thing that a few of us started last year, Saturday is Hawaiian Tie Day. So wear your Hawaiian or a big flowery colored tie on Saturday. Paul and I, Michael Bergeron, and several of us wore our Hawaiian ties last year on Saturday. You know, like Seersucker Suit Friday. So anybody who wants to take part in that can. So do you have any questions about the history, traditions, no-nos, secrets of the oratory?
So what's the deal with the no snake rule or no throwing stuff at the audience?
Okay, all those things have a deal. They have a reason. In 2000 in Memphis, I don't know if you're friends with John Killian, but his birthday was the other day, and I posted a picture of where he was the MC and I was speaking at the Oratory in Memphis.
Right.
You had a guy from North Carolina, first name Gilbert. He thought he was the smartest Confederate there was. In fact, for his email, he had Mensa-Reb at whatever, yahoo.com. And he was like, oh, how awful the SCV is. It's being taken over by radicals and racists and crap. And he actually got himself on the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather exposing the SCV. Now, that did not go over well.
No.
So Gilbert was in the oratory, and he was kind of used that to tell everybody what they were doing wrong. Well, he didn't get to finish his speech because the crowd erupted and started throwing all their ice and peanuts and stuff at him during his speech and basically ran him off the stage. So that's when we came up with that rule, because in the next year, I said, all right, I want y'all to get out of your system. So I made a big poster of Gilbert's face, and I put it on the end of the other end of the table. I said, all right, all y'all got stuff to throw, have at it now before I give my speech. And Linda and a bunch of the ladies brought slingshots, and the whole crowd just destroyed it. And since Gilbert was from North Carolina, Frank Powell went, that's it, you win. So that was the throwing objects at the stage rule. That's where that came from. So, and the only one per division, that's the Kurt Lyons rule, because one year he had a whole stage troupe with him and basically did a play for his speech. So there's that rule. And so the inebriated rule came from a guy that we've all remembered named Terry Cooley. If you remember at the Anderson convention, he was the one trying to bang on the door and get into the oratory that night. So that's kind of was his rule. But he used to do the oratory, and there were several times we had to drag him off the stage.
Remain somewhat on topic. That's one that's obvious. I'm trying to think.
No politics. The
Yeah.
Uncle Jeff rule. Because one year, Troy Massey was running for commander-in-chief. And so his brother, Jeff, we called him Uncle Jeff, because he said, oh, well, the MOSB is like them SCV's uncles. You should let us rule you. So we called him Uncle Jeff. And his oratory speech, he basically did a campaign speech for his brother, for his oratory speech. So that's where the politic and Uncle Jeff rule came from.
The Frank rule. Do you want to go into that? There, it seems like Memphis. There's two rules that I know of that have come out of Memphis now.
Yeah.
Memphis reunions.
Yeah. That was an ugly reunion. But anyway, that was like the pre-coup reunion, as it were.
Right.
So the Frank deal, if you remember a few years ago, we did a oratory T-shirt with like an outline of Hank as a fundraiser for the museum. So our break entertainment was a modeling. Who could model their oratory T-shirt? Well, Frank goes up and lifts his up and shows the crowd. Well, that's where it came from. No exposing yourselves to the crowd. And then he broke that rule again this last year.
Everybody except for Kevin broke that rule this last
year. Yeah. But Frank started it. I mean, you want to talk about ugliness. JC even did it.
Yeah.
So you won't catch me doing that.
Only one participant per. We've covered that one.
Yeah.
Trying to think. So I'll go ahead and tell y'all how I got involved in, and it's been, I think I've consecutively come in second place, with the exception of this past year. I broke my record. Came in second place for every every year that I competed in the oratory. We were in Richmond at that reunion, and during the break, while the judges were deliberating, I get called up there and have to do a dramatic reading of the lyrics of Wrecking Ball by Miley Cyrus. And I'm not a strong, put something on a piece of paper and read it out loud. I'm really not. So I was having some problems with that, and while I was not noticeably inebriated, I had a few in me anyway. So the next year I decided to get revenge on Chuck and James, and I decided to do the oratory, and have been in it every year except for save one.
Now, was your first year Dallas?
My first year was Dallas.
Where you were going to make a statue of me made out of pennies?
In the shape of a Buddha.
Yeah. Well,
and then if we all came up and rubbed your belly at the correct time, we'd get out of business meeting by lunch.
Yeah, I believe Charles LeRae won it that year.
He did.
So I've been telling him he needs to do it again this year. I think Alan Heron from Texas, Kenny Ramsey will probably be back doing it from North Carolina. He does a good job. Alabama will have some.
The defending champion, Carl Rare.
Well, the defending champion, you would think, would do it. Yes. Mississippi may have a first timer.
I'm hoping I can push him towards it.
So we'll see. Well, occasionally we have one from Florida. So who do we have? We had one from Tennessee last year, I think.
Bruce Gibson.
We had one from California last year.
We did.
We had like 8 contestants, but it didn't get drug out. It was all good. Last year was one of the better ones we've had.
Yeah. Carl says Carl plans on it, so he's gonna defend his title.
David,
we had
Shatner, Dylan, yeah.
We also had Randy Burbidge last year from South Carolina. So South Carolina.
Yeah, that's good.
I can't remember if anybody from Georgia did it. Kelly
did.
Yeah. Was
McAllister? Like I said, the first time I did it, he did it, and that wasn't his first time. So he's been doing it a long time.
Was McAllister? Did he do it last year?
I don't think he was at the convention last year.
Yeah, we didn't have that many resolutions.
Right.
I represented Mississippi. Carl, Bruce. Was it Chuck Rand last year, or was Charles back in?
Goes back to Charles again, because Chuck Rand had used up his 3 wins.
Right. So Charles, do we have anybody from Texas?
Yeah, Alan Heron, I believe, did it from Texas.
Yeah, he had the grill.
He'll be there. Good.
Nobody from Virginia competed.
I don't think we've ever had anybody from Virginia. We used to have many years ago from South Carolina. Gene Hogan did it several years. In fact, he won it one year. So we've had South Carolina in the past. North Carolina, Herman did it several years.
Yeah. Is that where the banana thing came in, or was that just from a floor fight?
The what now?
Herman and his banana.
Oh no, that's a Kaito thing.
Okay.
It was after the Richmond convention. Some guy complained how many times Ed was getting up and getting the microphone, and he said, "Well, you know, the rest of us wait in line all day to get to speak, but this guy jumps up and down like a gorilla and gets in front of the microphone all the time." So later, Herman gets the microphone and says, "Well, since Ed's going to be a gorilla, I brought him this banana right in the middle of the meeting." And so that's how the whole banana thing started. And then for a while, Herman would do the bestowing of the golden banana.
Well, Chuck, we have been on it for an hour. I think that's a good point for us to call for the evening.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I hope everybody learned something.
Yeah, I think they did. I think we've sparked some interest for the oratory this year. I'm seeing several people saying that they'd like to enter if they can make it. So who knows?
There. Don't.
And I will say this: SCV chat will never go live from the oratory.
No, because you don't know what might happen.
And you also really need to be there in person to experience it.
Yes, you do. It's one of those kinds of things. So I do have some videos from some older oratories we may dig out one day that are interesting, some of them. I even may have some of the Memphis oratory, I don't know. So, yeah, maybe we'll put those in the archives at Confederate Museum someday.
It needs
to go, oh, those geezers are crazy.
Yeah, we really should. Just reminders, everybody. Thursday, Moose has something planned to look around the Confederation. Not sure what. I'd ask him if he was on, but no Moose. He's hanging in a barn somewhere after being slung around a ice road in Canada.
Here's a suggestion for a Monday show.
Mm-hmm.
You might want to have maybe Scott Hall on sometime to talk about legal stuff and SCV camps and what we can do and not do and all those sort. That might be a good topic to do sometime. I was thinking of.
We've been talking about trying to get Scott on, and I think you're right.
Good deal.
So remember that. Look around the Confederation this Thursday. Remember to support our sponsors, 1175 Firearm Tactical, the Confederate Legion, and LarryMcClooney.com to get a copy of In Defense of Beauregard.
Do you see this real quick? Victor said, Florida will win if I enter. How can he not enter now and not lose face?
Right. You better be figuring out a way to get to convention.
You called out, Victor. You stuck your foot in it.
Yeah, never stick your foot in it. All right, guys. Well, we're going to call it here. Hope everybody has a great rest of the week. Remember to catch our other shows, Alamo City Guard chat, the Christian Legion started. Y'all go, watch over there. Look around the Confederation. Everybody, let's do this. We can continue to grow. Remember to like, share, subscribe to the pages and on YouTube. And until next week, no Fumar in the elevator.
Adios.